stars, my name is Kelly and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blue Studios. And I am so glad that you joined me here for a class today. I love coding, I love graphic design, and I am excited to share my love of design with you. I've been coding and doing graphic design since I was a kid, probably about your age. And I love design because it helps you share your ideas and communicate messages to anyone in fun and exciting ways. So let's jump right in. We have a lot to learn and a lot to design today. So for all of you kid designers out there, I don't need to tell you how much fun it is to find the perfect font or text for your design project. Did you know that there is actually a word to describe people who create and study different types of text and fonts? It's called typography. Studying fonts is kind of like studying people. Fonts come in different shapes and sizes and have personalities and different purposes. And they even belong to something that we call families, just like people. So let's look at different types of fonts, and I want you to tell me a little bit of what you think each one says about the design. All right, so the first one we have up is saying, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. So what do you think that this font represents, or what does that communicate to you? Well, I know for me, it looks a little bit more elegant, kind of formal, like you're going to a fancy ball or something, or a cotillion maybe. So that's what that font communicates to me. So let's go to the next font. So this font says Happy Mother's Day. It seems kind of bold, a little bit strong, and for some, maybe even a little glamorous, might I say? I don't know. What do you think? I'd love to hear what you think when you're doing your own projects as well. All right, the next one says Hugs and Kisses, okay? So this font is kind of cute, a little bit more informal, and it's also something a little bit more elementary. Maybe this is a font that you would use for something that's designed for little kids or something like that. All right, let's go to the next font. So this font is really interesting. It says, wishing you a bright 2020, all right? So let me take a look at this font. Kind of looks a little bulky, kind of condensed, so that means it's like squished together. So I'm not quite sure what that conveys, but it definitely is really bulky and bold. So I really pay attention to the 2020 on there. All right, well, let's go to the next one. This is a little bit different too, all right? So this says, visit us at Magnolia Street. So this looks a little bit more old school, like somebody used a typewriter. So I don't know if you're old enough to remember or know what that is, but typewriters were used to write letters and text to people before computers were invented. And the text like that looked like this. The text that was used for typewriters looked kind of like this text right in the middle, right here. And also, I'm not sure if you noticed, but the text on the top and the bottom, above the address and below the address, is a different font. It's actually a font called Montserrat, and it's a font that I actually really love to use quite often. And if you notice, the font letters are kind of spread a little bit farther apart than the ones in the middle. So I want you to remember this example because we're going to talk a little bit later about what that concept means. So hold your thought. Hold that thought. And the last one that we have is, it says, welcome little one. So this is kind of cute, fun, a little funky and wonky. I use this font for fun designs usually, especially when I'm doing designs for kids. But you probably wouldn't want to use this font for something that's about really serious business, right? It's not a formal font at all. So right now, I just showed you probably about 6 to 8 different fonts. But did you know there are over 200,000 individual fonts in the world? And there are new ones created by typographers every day. That's why typography can be so fun and cool. You can even eventually invent your own fonts. How cool is that? But what does typography even involve? So this is what typography involves. It involves selecting fonts or letter styles. So asking yourself, what type of font do I want to use? It also involves choosing lettering styles. So how big or how small the font should be. And line spacing. This is how much space you should have in between each line. And then the letter spacing is how far apart the letters should be. And color is what color should the font be, not only the text, but also the background of the text be. So what is the color that the text should be on? So let's start with selecting fonts and lettering styles. So let's go with that. So I want you to go to fonts.google.com. So this is a really cool and easy way, right here, fonts.google.com. And it's a really cool and easy way to see thousands and thousands and thousands of font. So I want you to choose a font that you really like, all right? And hopefully your parents won't be too mad, but I'm gonna have you download that font family. So let's see. Let's choose Railway. I like this font right here. But you can keep scrolling and scrolling and seeing all the different types of fonts. So I'm gonna click on Railway, and I'm gonna click on download the family, right? And then the font package is usually in this thing called a zip file. And then I'm gonna click open it up, all right? So when I open up, let's do Railway Light, okay? So let's show you that. All right, so basically a font, also called a typeface, is the sum of all these capital and lowercase letters that you see and numbers and symbols within that specific font family. And so a couple of common fonts that you may have seen are called Times New Roman, Helvetica, Arial, etc. So fonts are divided into two primary groups called sans and sans serif fonts. So when you see a font, usually it falls into one of these two categories. So a serif is basically a tail that finishes off a letter stroke. So you see these little tiny tails here that I circled for you? Those are called tails that finish off a letter stroke. So for example, this S, at the feet of this S, you'll see these little serifs. At the bottom of the R, the I, the F, you see these little tails. So those are all called serifs, okay? So serif typefaces often are formal, these authoritative image, have this kind of authoritative look and feel that make them ideal for things like newspaper and books. And they're slightly formal style is usually used within it's very subtle and it's used in a very subtle style. So usually something like when you're writing a paper or an essay, you might use something that's more formal serif like Times New Roman, right? So a sans serif typeface or font like Helvetica or Arial features clean lines. So it has none of those little serifs on there. You see, it doesn't have any little tails on it. It's clean. So the word sans, which also derives from this French term, which derives from this Latin term, which basically means without or in the absence of. So remember that sans just means without. So sans serif fonts just means they don't have any serifs. So they don't have any of those little fancy tails. So some people, including myself, like sans serif fonts more because they don't have those extra tails and they can usually be easier to read, especially when you're talking about a computer screen. But for example, people like my mom, on the other hand, she loves serif fonts. She always uses those all the time for anything that she writes and anything that she communicates. So for some, it's really just a matter of preference. Some people can read serif fonts better and other people can read sans serifs. So remember, the easiest way to remember the difference are serif fonts are extra, they're doing the most because they have all these fancy tails on the end, and they're classy and a little bit fancy. Sans serif, remember the sans means without, are fonts that keep it simple, no frills, they tell it like it is. So you can start to see how you'd use a serif font in certain designs and a sans serif font in other designs, right? Okay, I think you're starting to get the picture. So let's move on. We're going to talk about letter sizing. So when you select fonts for a design project, keep readability in mind, all right? Readability is what it sounds like. It's how easy is that font to read. So in general, blocks of content that are italicized, which are a little slanted to the right, are not as readable as ones that are not italicized. A decorative font, like that fancy font that we saw earlier, one of the first ones we saw, might be easy for a greeting card when you're just writing one or two words like warm wishes or something, or you're invited. But that ordinate text might be, not very easy to read if you're talking about paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of that font, right? And then also legibility is a concern. So what's the difference between readability and legibility? Well, readability is concerned with how easy it is to scan and quickly read a paragraph, while legibility is looking at how easy it is to distinguish individual letters. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I have a text that doesn't look like a language, as you notice down here, that anyone would recognize. All right, so I'm going to let you in on a little design secret. So designers use text called lorem ipsum. So that is LOREM IPSUM, okay? And lorem ipsum, if you type it into your Google, is actually this fake pseudo-Latin text. And so I'm going to go to loremipsum.io. So I'm going to click on that link, and it's going to take me there, right? And so lorem ipsum is actually a fake pseudo-Latin text. And Latin is a language that we no longer use, but was spoken by the Romans a long time ago. And funny enough, I actually took Latin in high school, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. So why did I use text from a fake dead language that no one uses, okay? So in web and graphic design, lorem ipsum is actually a placeholder that's used to demonstrate how text is going to look in a document without actually having the content before you design it. So if you just want to test how text will look or fit into a long brochure or something that you're doing before you have the actual content, you would insert lorem ipsum. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. So again, I'm on loremipsum.io, and what you can do is actually, if you need, for example, you can have it generate 5 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, if that's how much text that you think it's going to take up. You can have it generate sentences. So if you know it's only going to be a few lines of text that can fit on that page, you can do that. Or you can actually do words. So if you know it's going to be a title text, then you want it, the title should be probably no longer than 5 words usually. You can do that. So what I'm going to do is generate 2 sentences of lorem ipsum text. So I'm going to go ahead and generate it. And all right, voila, it generated the text for me. So then I'm going to click copy. And then right back here, you can click paste. And now the text is already in there. Isn't that cool? So you can do the same and copy and paste it just like I did here. So when selecting an appropriate font, you can insert lorem ipsum text to determine if a font for your design is the perfect balance of readability, legibility, and has a little bit of artistic style that you're looking for. All right. So the next thing I need you to do is to give me some space between my lines and letters, of course. All right, so that was a typography joke, but maybe I should stick to graphic design and not comedy. All right, so with lines and spacing between lines and letters, you want to strike the perfect balance of space with your font lines and letters. So first, you want to have vertical, which means up and down line spacing. This is called leading, or vertical spacing. So this affects exactly how well someone can read your text, right? Your fonts. If you are already typing essays that you have to turn into your teacher, do you remember how your teacher always says that your papers need to be double spaced, right? Well, that's because it's so much easier for your teacher to read 20 to 30 double spaced essays from students versus just a one spaced essay. If they were reading tons and tons of paragraphs from 30 different students, come on, that is a lot of reading, right? And we want to make it easier for a teacher. So it makes it so much easier when a teacher can read long essays that are just spaced out, right? And did you know that according to typographical research, the minimum spacing between lines should be 120 to 145% of the lettering size? All right, let me show you a quick mathematical example of this, all right? So for example, if you're using 12-point text, all right, you're using 12-point text, the way you can figure out the smallest, the minimum distance between each line that is optimal for somebody to read it, like the baseline, all you have to do is multiply 12 times 120, or 1.2, sorry, 12 times 1.20, that represents 120%, and then you get 14.4 points. So now you know that you need 14.4 points, which is the smallest distance between lines for optimal readability. Isn't that kind of cool? This will also apply if you were also doing web design and wanted to code how much space you would want between lines of text for a specific font. This is also the type of equation you use as well. So anytime someone tells you that you're creative and artistic, so that means you're not good at math, do not listen to them, okay? For example, you can use a mathematical equation like this to optimize readability for your font, just like I showed you here. Also, fonts are geometrical masterpieces that include concepts of symmetry, spline curves, and much more. And then there's tracking. So again, don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't be technical, mathematical, and also be creative at the same time, because they both go together, all right? So the next thing I have up is something called tracking or spacing, right, in between each letter. And this is also relevant to the readability of the text, all right? So let me show you exactly how leading can change, or how tracking can change how easy it is to read a text or not, all right? So let me copy this. I'm gonna copy this one because I don't want to mess this up because I made this really nice. All right. Oops. All right. So, actually, let me make another piece of text. All right. So I'm going to add a new text. And I'm going to just play around with the tracking. So let me make sure this is wide enough. So over here in this spacing part in Canva, you can change the line height, which you can't really see right there, and you can change how wide and close. See how close you can get the letters to? They're almost like overlapping each other, right? So based on how far or how close you have your letters apart, can also provide a different type of personality to your design, right? So if I have my letters far apart, it can provide a feeling of distance, or maybe like the great outdoors or something. And it may be also, you can also use wide apart text for putting a little tiny header that might be not as important, but you want to provide a little bit of design element to. Like if I had a flyer for this class, I would make a far apart text heading that says Blue Studios Presents at the top of that invitation. Or it can make something look more formal. Or if you squeeze them together, it can give you a feeling of crowdedness, which is another thing that you could use in a design. It really just depends on what you're trying to convey, right? And then last but not least, let's talk about color. Let's give that font a little pizzazz, right? All right, so a professional typographer always considers color and the density of color. And when you're designing a printed design, a business card or a brochure or something that needs to be printed, right? And you can also think about the heaviness of the color of the font and also the background when you're also doing online designs as well. So basically, the layout of the text, the spacing in the line, the spacing of the words and lines, the font, the background colors, all contribute to color density. So typically, people usually find that white space is more inviting to readers. So that's why most text is printed on white paper, right? When we have printer paper, it's usually white paper, right? Or pages with text on the internet usually have a white background. Have you noticed that as well? But it really depends, your background color really depends on the look and feel that you're going for. So it just depends. So if you want to just add a splash of color without worrying about readability, you can use another tool called transparency, right? So you have opaque, which means something you can't see through, right? And then you have transparent, which means something you can completely see through, like a clean, clear glass, right? So let me show you an example, all right? We're gonna play with the transparency of this block that says transparency on it. So we're gonna see how see-through we can make this object and how that will help us read the text better, right? So let's try it. So over here in the corner, you'll see this little checkerboard, and that's transparency. So if your transparency is at 100%, that means it's opaque, right? That means you can't see through it. So anything behind this block, that goes behind this block, you won't be able to see, right? So let's play around with it. So here's 50% transparency. All right, how does that look? You can see the colors a lot better, right? Or the text a lot better. Let's do 25%. All right. Oh, you can even see that better. So this is a way you can play around with the colors so that you can be able to read text better without having, just a boring white background, right? Or we could do what I call is like a very light tint, like a 10%. Now that looks really nice too. I like that a lot. Looks good. What do you think? I like it too. All right, cool. So we are going to let's do a really quick recap of what we just learned about typography before we begin our design challenge, all right? So typography is the art of studying fonts, right? Fonts come in different shapes and sizes, have personality and purpose, and even belong to something that we call families. So people who create and study different types of text and fonts are called typographers, right? A font is the sum and all of the capital and lowercase numbers and letters and symbols within that specific family. So a tool that you can use to see a ton of font families is called Google Fonts. And fonts are typically divided into two primary groups. Remember? We have serifs and sans serifs. And what are serifs? There are these fancy little tails at the end of a font, like Times New Roman is a serif font. Sans serif fonts don't have those fancy little tails. And the word sans means without. That way, that's the easiest way to remember the difference between those two. A common sans serif font is Helvetica or Arial. And when you're being a great designer and typographer, you should use something called lorem ipsum. Remember, this is a tool that you can use to put placeholder text so that you can see how that font will look in a visual form of a document or a design without having any of the real content available yet, right? And then when selecting appropriate font, again, you can use that lorem ipsum text to see if that font is the perfect balance between readability, legibility, and artistic style. And you can play around with the font style, leading, tracking, colors, backgrounds, font, and just to find the right fonts for your design, just like an expert typographer. So now that you're an expert in typography, let's delve into our design challenge, all right? The design challenge today is, let's see, let's scroll. We are going to create a flyer or invitation, right? And we're going to keep typography in mind based on our font types and sizes. We're going to keep in mind our letter and line spacing. We're going to keep in mind the color, the readability, the message we're trying to convey, and also our artistic and creative style that we're adding to it. So you need to make sure that your flyer has 1 or 2 headlines, subheads, a few lines of text, or a summary statement, and a summary statement or call to action. So call to action is basically, now that I have all this information, what should I do next? Most designs should have a call to action. That is usually a very good practice that good designers have in place. So if somebody tries to make you create a design without a call to action, I agree, you should really try to push back on that. All right? So, and I want to make sure that you really explain your typographical choices when you upload your project. So right below this video, there's a submit your project button. So not only should you submit your project, your flyer, your invitation that you're designing right now, you should also submit the reasons why you chose those designs. So make sure that you also include down here your typographical choices. So make sure you fill that in, download that, and upload that with your design as well, because I want to know why exactly you made those design choices. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to walk you through how I'm going to design my own flyer for something I call a watch party, right? But you should design your own flyer right now with me. So this is what my flyer and invitation copy is going to be, okay? So my headline is, make the best designs ever. And then my subheaders are, join my Blue Studios watch party. Join me as I teach all about the art and science of typography, right? So then I have a few lines of text that say like, hey, did you know there's actually a word to describe people who create and study different types of text and fonts? It's called typography. Learn about the basics of typography, fonts and families, serif versus sans serif fonts, and how you can use lorem ipsum to pick the best fonts for your design. And then the call to action is be there or be square, and email me at kells@kelly.com. All right? So that is their call to action if they like what they see on my flyer. Okay? All right. So let us begin this design. I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. All right. So before I start my design, one of the things that we always look at first or think through is our color palette, right? So again, I use a Blue Studios color guide, right? So these are my colors that I always use. So I have a blue, a yellow, a pink, and also a dark, what I call like an accent color, which is like this dark, rich, kind of navy blue, I would call it. Maybe that's the word for it. And remember that when we're designing, especially for the web or the internet, we use these things called hex codes. Remember, these are 6-digit like letters and numbers that represent those colors. So when I so it helps me communicate with the computer to tell it what color I want based on this communication, based on this code that I gave it. And then there's also something called CMYK that I use all the time when I'm using print, right? So this helps me make sure that whether I have something on a website or whether I have something in a brochure about Blue Studios, the colors look exactly the same, right? So this helps tell my printer what the color needs to look like on paper. And it's just a way for me to communicate to the printer about what that color looks like, right? And CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and the K means black. Don't ask me why, but it does. And also there's another term called RGB. I tend to use hex instead of RGB, and RGB is also used for like digital media, like TV, etc. It's red, green, and blue, right? So it tells you the different percentages of red, green, and blue that you need to make a specific color, and the same thing goes for CMYK. So that's a really quick overview of how you use colors and use these different color codes and combinations to communicate what color you want to display back to you. It's pretty cool. All right, so these are my color schemes. All right, so let me go back. So what I'm gonna do is actually, what I wanna use for this background is a really, really dark blue. So, and the reason why I'm using a really dark blue is because I want, I feel like it's a watch party. So watch parties usually, you know, you have all the lights off, you have the TV on. So that's kind of like the point of view, or like the feeling that I want to bring in this. It's almost like you're at the movies or something, you know, for a watch party. So this is my design. And then along those same lines, maybe I can find let me see, like a TV or a screen or something. Find some type of element that might be good for this. Okay. I'm looking at some of these different designs. Kind of like this. So as you can see, this icon ended up being like a black or a shade of black, right? So I want that to pop against this background. So I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it white, okay? All right. Let's see. So my headline is make the best designs ever, right? So let's look at some of these fonts that I have. I like this Now Bold. So that's a sans serif font, right? It's kind of boring though. Let's see. Maybe we'll try this. Oh, look at that. That's kind of interesting. Make the best designs ever. It's kind of funky. All right, and I think those, I'm gonna reduce the line height. But you see it was automatically 1.4, which is 140%. Remember, 120 to 140, 45% is the basically minimum line height that any font should have in order for it to be legible, right? So it automatically sets that for me. But I want this to be closer together because I want more space for my design, right? Make the best designs ever. Lines. I'm going to underscore this ever. That looks good. I'm going to change that to my Blue Studios pink, right? Ooh, it's starting to look really nice. And what is the next thing that I need to say? My subhead is join my Blue Studios watch party. Join me as I teach about the art and science of typography. I wonder if I could find a photo of myself. Where is a photo of me? Got a lot of photos of other people. Let's crop this. That looks like me, right? Ooh. So let's do this. So what I'm thinking of is putting myself, I think this should be, what I'm going to do is bring the icon of the TV forward so it looks like I'm inside the TV. Okay. All right, let me move this over. And then when you double click on it, you can resize. So that way you guys can see my Blue Studio shirt. And then I wish this thing would be, let me crop this too because this is in my way. I'm tired of this image being in my way. So I'm going to crop it so that when I select something down here, it doesn't select that. Okay. All right. So these are my, subheaders. Forward. Let's see if I can put a background other than this blue right here. Okay. So let's add this. I think I'm going to add the Blue Studios light blue. What I'm going to do is put that here and then position backwards. Doesn't that look like I'm inside the TV now? Fancy trick, huh? All right. So let me pick another. Ooh, that Montserrat light. That's my favorite. I think I'm going to use that one. Join my Blue Studios watch party. So now that I've put this object together, what I'm going to do is make it a grouped object. So that way I can move it around and also even resize it. And I'm going to do the same thing for this too, so that I can move that element around because I always want it to be together. Okay, so let's go back. I lost my text somehow, so I got to recopy this. Control C. And now I got my text back. I got it back. Actually, I'm going to separate this text out. Can't see that. Let's make it white. And what I actually think is make this uppercase. So I'm going to make this uppercase because I want it to be clear. Let me make this white. I'm going to make this text white too because I like the contrast on the dark blue background. And also what I'm going to do is make this uppercase. So another way, instead of just pressing caps lock and like typing in words in uppercase, is you can actually just make words automatically uppercase by selecting that, okay? All right. Join my Blue Studios watch party. Let me make this bigger. Join my Blue Studios watch party. Let's see. Now, let's think of some other fonts we can use. That's a glacial indifference. Interesting. I don't know. Let's keep going. If you notice, some of these fonts are actually called serifs, right? And some of them are called sans serif. So now you know exactly what that means. Let us see. Let us keep going. I'm not seeing anything that particularly speaks to me. Let's try this. No, that doesn't. That's too bold. Too bold. Maybe you can give me some advice. I'd love to hear some of your feedback on my design as well. So you can tell me how I can improve it. This is Barrio. I don't know. I don't know. That seems a little bit too busy. I kind of like this font. It's calling to me, but I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm gonna shorten this text. And what I'm gonna say, what I'm gonna do is this. And there's another tool I'm gonna use. I'm going to actually put this Join My Blue Studios watch party in the corner. I want to save some space, okay? So I'm going to put this in the corner. I'm going to try to put this thing in the corner so it can be all right. And then what color shall I make this? Let me add in my yellow, my Blue Studios yellow, to see what that looks like. That could work. And then I'm going to make this color blue. And then I'm going to make this bigger. Cool. And then I have this funky text that talks about the art and science of photography. So that's kind of cool. Reason why I chose this text is because I thought this art and science looks kind of, you know, almost like archaeology. I don't know. That's what it feels like to me. Like something around archaeology, and it reminds me of art and science kind of being something that comes together but is a little funky, right? Okay. Now I will few lines of text. So let's put this. Actually, let's do this. I've changed my mind about this blue. I'm gonna ungroup it. I'm gonna move this out of the way. And I'm gonna put myself, just me in here. It's all about me, you know. That's what I say, you know. All right. So I'm gonna put myself in here. I'm gonna put myself right there. Let's make sure that you can't see any of the white group, and then I can turn this looks like I'm kind of turning this to the side, but maybe that doesn't work. I'll keep it straight for now. And then let's put, so this is the header, or this is the text, or the main text, right? So let me make this white. So we have this, and Right now, this is Open Sans Light. So remember, sans means no serifs, so it doesn't have those little tails and curls at the end. All right, so I'm gonna paste that. And let's see. Oops, don't want to get rid of that. Okay, so let's make, did you know? It's called Typography. And we'll paste that. And then, all right, so right now I'm using about 3 different types of fonts. So I've selected these fonts. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to use any other ones because I think it'd be a font overload. And it would kind of make people confused, right? All right, and then we want a call to action, remember? So I gotta make some space for that. God, I got a lot of text on here. Oh no. I don't know if there's enough room for me to be creative. But we'll see what we can do. Sorry about that. Okay. And what we want to do is add some color. Maybe there's a label I can use, or streak or something. I'm trying to have something at the bottom that looks, no, that doesn't work. Maybe a tear. Oh, that's interesting. I like tears. They're kind of funky, even though filter effects. Can't really make this another color though. So, ooh, that looks nice. That actually looks like my color. So I'm gonna switch this out for the tear because that makes it look a little bit more funky. Ooh, looks nice. Oh wait, no. That's not what I want to do. Should shrink. There we go. Ooh, that looks good. Position, we gotta send it back. Wait, where did my text go? Oh, there it is. It's hiding over here. It's hard to see because it's the same color. There we go. Join my Blue Studios watch party. I probably need to put this Blue Studios logo on here too. Just gonna copy it. Paste. Ooh. Move it over here. Looks great. And then maybe I have another tear. It's not cute. Wish you could change the color, but you can't. It's no fun. On a tear, I can actually change the color of. Well, that's not fun. Because I wanted to use pink. That's not working for me. I want to use the color pink at the bottom because the call to action can pop out. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's just see all my shapes that I have. It's kind of interesting. I like those little dots on the side. They're kind of cute. I think I can work with this. I'm gonna bring this forward. So I'm making this bold, right, because it's a call to action, so it's what I want them to pay attention to. All right. Let me make some more space. It's feeling a little crowded in here. Okay, so let us use the pink, and I'm gonna make all these little dots. I'm gonna make them the Blue Studios blue. Okay, dot, dot, dot. Interesting. All right, let's look at this full screen. Actually, let's zoom it out. Not too bad, not too bad. Let's close this out. Looking good. All right, so this is my first iteration of my design. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna list all the different, font types and sizes. I'm gonna list all why I chose like the letter and line spacing, right? So one of the things I could do is maybe even play around with this, that's uppercase. Play around a little bit with the letter spacing, like spread it out a little bit so people can see it clearly. Also, I didn't really spread out too many of my lines, but I actually probably could spread out the line height a little bit more to make it a little bit easier to read on these lines now that I think about it, right? So I'm going to spread this out a little bit more. Another thing that I did with this design is I underscored. I had that little line underneath to make the best designs ever, right? So that little line underneath makes you really focus on the word ever, right? And then the colors, obviously I chose our Blue Studios palette, but I chose the dark blue as a background just to make sure that you can see the text clearly and you can possibly see it from far away. Like what if I wanted to print this, right? And then in terms of readability, I think it's pretty decent, but another way that I could do this is share this with friends or family and see how well it is, how easy it is for them to read, and also talk to them about like, what's the first thing you notice within this design, right? And then the message that I'm getting across is a watch party, right? So I have me inside of a little TV or screen. That kind of looks a little bit interesting. And then of course I have a couple artistic and creative touches, like for example, like that underscore, my little rips on the side and how I put text inside of the little page tear rip. I chose this bottom with the little dots on the side so that you could focus on it almost like it was like, you know, hammered in there, right? Like you had like a little nail that had a blue top and you're like hammering it on the side. So those are some of my artistic and creative touches. But, you know, I want to make sure that you submit your project below. Remember the submit your project button. And make sure you upload your design and then upload another page about why you made those typographical choices that you did with your text. I really want to see them. And remember, there really is no wrong or right answer. What I want you to focus on is being thoughtful about why you chose every single element on your design and what each element conveys to someone reading it for the first time, right? Awesome. So I had such an amazing time going really, really deep into fonts and typography. I cannot wait to see what you're going to design and build. So I cannot wait to see you on the next stream, you STEAM superstar. All right, I'll see you later.
Wow, wow, wow. Did you guys enjoy that lesson? Yeah, I did too. I literally learn something new every time I watch a Blue Studios class, right? You too? So cool, my mind is blown! But the fun doesn't stop here just because that class is over. No way! You can do this project over and over and over. And next time, watch it with a friend. STEMming is always better with friends. Remember to follow Blue Studios on social media, post your projects, and tag Blue Studios. We may feature your project on our page, and if you enter one of our contests, you could win cool prizes. It's real! And remember to check out the live calendar to book your next class, but if you can't make it, you can always check out the classes later, live, on demand. All right, keep STEMming.